there's been a lot of talk over the past few years about how crime is out of control, particularly in cities when we know that crime has been declining since the spike in the pandemic. And you see the elevation on these platforms that are owned by these guys of highly racialized crime content as well. And when you hear about these efforts like Praxis and these other private city enterprises that these guys are investing in, it seems clear that they want to create private fiefdoms around the world, but now they're almost using this as an experiment with the entire United States. Like, do you see a connection between the elevation of this like crime hysteria and panic on the right and an effort to privatize our public spaces?
Oh, definitely. They're trying to polarize public opinion across a range of issues, usually using the scapegoat tactic. Everything that's possibly wrong, even if it's actually not wrong or it's better than it used to be, is the fault of democratic governance with a small d and a big D. And we have no choice except to throw out these progressives or Democrats who were ruining everything and replace them with people who were approved of by tech. We saw that with the LA fires, where it became a story framed around issues of DEI or democratic incompetence or water supplies that have nothing to do with the water in LA. They just kind of flexed their muscle there and showed how they'll get on TV and say that anything is about anything, and that'll get covered. That'll get repeated, whereas you didn't have Democrats on TV saying this is climate change and this is going to get worse and here's going to be, our policy for dealing with it. Only the Republicans seem to be framing these things. And I started covering this in San Francisco because I thought last year this was a local story. This network state cult is going to try to take over the city government of San Francisco, a very liberal, progressive city on the West Coast, and go from there. That was what Gary Tan of Y Combinator, who's a part of the network state idea, said. If we can do it here, we can do it anywhere. What happened was that the collapse of the Biden campaign, plus the ascension of J.D. Vance to the ticket, opened up this opportunity to, instead of experimenting in San Francisco, and I thought, hey, I'll write a series that warns everybody these guys are going to do to the country what they're doing to San Francisco. Instead, they accelerated, to use one of their favorite words, to the national level now. And now we're all in it. So I did not foresee this happening this quickly. I thought maybe 4 to 10 years, we're going to see these tech guys taking over federal government. And so that's very much what we're going to see, a constant polarization and scapegoating. Who is the out group that everybody can be united against? And, so-called wokeism, DEI, anything progressive, which they depict as something all Democrats believe in, has become the scapegoat target for them.
So that's fascinating. They were about to do the 10x investment, and then they were like, wait a second, we've got 100x that just showed up for us. I talk about that in terms of ants, because Elon Musk announced his he was going to do 45 million. It turned out to be about $300 million that we know of, like directly supporting Trump's campaign right after Trump's assassination. But that was right when the Trump campaign knew that Vance was going to be the nominee. And was that basically like, was Vance essentially the signal to these tech bros, whether it's, Musk or the PayPal mafia, the Sachs, all of these guys that like, okay, Trump's bought into the plan now?
Yeah, I think Vance sealed the deal, right? J.D. Vance is a creation largely of Peter Thiel. At every step of the way, Peter Thiel has been there. Even when he wrote his book, it was while working for Peter Thiel in San Francisco.
Has he ever made professionally a dollar that wasn't from Peter Thiel money?
I think he did like less than a year at a law firm in Ohio before he moved out to California. Okay, but fair. He has been on the payroll for a very long time. Thiel got him elected to the Senate, and Thiel got him on the ticket. Because remember, J.D. Vance had compared Donald Trump to America's Hitler, called him all kinds of names, and he had to repair that damage, and he did. So when you can get a guy who called you Hitler on your ticket, something big has happened there. And that's when we saw this whole convergence. All the tech guys realized, again, here's a 100x opportunity to absolutely maximize and accelerate and take over the country instead of San Francisco. In fact, Gary Tan, who was here trying to mastermind this takeover, recently said, I'm going to spend less time on local politics. I'm going to Washington to focus on things there. And this is a guy who claims to be a Democrat, by the way. You know, all Democrats are rushing to Washington to be a part of the exciting new era there, of course. But yeah, I think that's my view on what happened, is that they realized there was an opportunity to scale it much more quickly. And that explains the rush nature of it. But again, this isn't all happening. This is all happening so quickly that, I mean, I think people thought, well, how could they have planned it if it's all happening so quickly? But I just think that they move very, very fast. I think they're moving at the speed of AI, and in fact, trying to, you know, feed everything through AI. And I think they just made a deal and they're running with it right now.
But that's Silicon Valley, to move fast and break things. So they're just taking that model to the U.S. government.
Yeah, move fast and break America.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about Trump's role, because, you know, there was this idea, which I never bought. I mean, you don't show up with $300 million. Donald Trump, there was a lot of like people saying that his ego is going to be hurt by Elon Musk. He's going to have a problem with Elon Musk running things. But I think the central sort of incentive structure that Donald Trump responds to is power and money and protection. And Elon Musk shows up, and this is a guy who's not only paid for Trump to be in office, but is now essentially the paid enforcer for everyone Trump is basically arranged now. And I think this was like a Russell Vote project from the Project 2025. I'm not going to have anybody in office, anybody who's working in my cabinet, who's going to challenge me. And we're going to take out all the inspector generals. We're just going to have no friction there. And Musk is the guy who's in charge of making sure there's no friction in the Senate and the House. And he doesn't have to show up there. He just basically says, I'm bankrolling anybody who wants to run against any of these people who don't do what we say. Give me your sense of like where Trump is in all this. Is he now just the chairman of the board and just sitting back and going like, oh, this is great. I can golf more.
That's I think the basic idea, right? He's been paid off in his meme coin money. I'm sure there are many more scams being planned that will keep his pockets well lined with money through various tech ventures, enriching his family. This is a general autocratic model. The problem these guys have is that there is a cult of Trump that is very powerful. But Trump is 78 years old. He won't be around forever. How do you build what comes after Trump? I'm not sure that J.D. Vance has that charisma. He pulled pretty low. And so they have to find a way to keep Trump happy, because he's right now the power that they have. If Trump were to turn on them, it would be catastrophic. He still does have the power to get rid of them to some degree, though who knows now what leverage they might have given, you know, how much money he's suddenly made off of tech ventures. But I think he's mostly the figurehead right now until something happens that forces Musk out of government. And even then, he can still exert a lot of control behind the scenes. What's surprising to me is that he insists on being in front of the camera right now. That's a very dangerous, you know, people can burn out on you pretty fast. The pendulum tends to swing. People don't want what they wanted a few months ago or a few weeks ago. So I think right now we're in a situation where Trump is a wholly captured subsidiary of these Silicon Valley guys, whether you want to call them the network state or something else. It's all the same idea, a tech authoritarianism. And so basically they acquired MAGA. And that's what Bannon is complaining about. These guys think they bought the MAGA movement, and now Musk is going to be the head of it. But there are some pretty serious complications there, one of them being that Musk is foreign-born, though I wouldn't be surprised to see some sycophantic Republican introducing a bill to allow foreign-born billionaires to run for president someday. I mean, we haven't seen anything yet in terms of what they're going to try.
Well, there's another problem that Musk has, and that is a total lack of charisma. I mean, and I'm not being, sort of like glib with this, like, if you wanted to go back, you often have authoritarians. I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't seem too sort of direct comparison, but you have authoritarians who match up with business interests. These authoritarians will often either have the plan themselves and the electoral, the sort of like charismatic appeal, or they could outsource it like Trump has in many respects, either to the Heritage Foundation or to, the reboot sort of like coalition, as it were. But they don't have anybody for that charisma, and they've been operating in, they got 2 years and then, maybe the Democrats take the House. But none of this seems to be playing out on a legislative field for the most part. What do they do, in 3 years or 4 years, assuming Trump doesn't run again?
Yeah, that's the problem they have to figure out. And I think, I'm not very religious myself, but it does seem like the good Lord has taken away the tongues of these men. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, they can't give a speech to save their lives. And it's a big advantage we have. So we need the people who are powerful speakers on the Democratic side of the spectrum to get out there and frame this and to challenge these people. You can't put Peter Thiel or Elon Musk on the stage with an articulate and smart person. They'll look like they'll melt. They can't speak. And so the way they express their power in other dangerous ways. And I think that's a great advantage that we have right now. This is largely right now a communications war about defining for people what is happening and what they can do about it. We still have a lot of power. Their plan depends on people being complacent and people not realizing what's going on until the last minute. And we do have to build toward 2026. These guys can be defeated. They want us to feel like they can't. They want us to feel like they're all powerful, but they're very vulnerable right now. And you have to remember that there's a very serious thing to try to destroy the government of the United States of America. And there will be accountability one day, but only if we wake up and start fighting it right now. I've heard from some people in the Democratic establishment, some big donors who are like, this is not the time to do this. And I'm like, absolutely wrong. The time actually was last year.
Yes.
We should have had a plan for this. You have to have a plan for losing, even in a low-level campaign.
That's what I want to ask you. I mean, this is a perfect segue into that. One, it's one thing. Okay, our plan to deal with this is to have Kamala Harris win. But then, on November 8th, you're like, okay, we got 3 months. It doesn't feel like. It feels like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer woke up yesterday, and we're like, wait, what's going on? And I mean, you were in Democratic politics. You worked, establishment Democrats. What is your assessment of the way that they've been responding? Because I looked at a speech from Hakeem Jeffries yesterday when he was talking, saying we don't have any leverage, and ostensibly he's talking about reconciliation. And I'm like, this is a speech that could have been given. This is a press conference that could have been given at literally any other time when Democrats didn't have the House. How is what's going on now not fundamentally unique and deserving of a different response?
Democrats don't understand the role of morality in politics. What we have right now is moral leverage. Our government is under attack. Our Constitution is under attack. These institutions, sacred institutions that every American, whether you're on the right or the left, has been taught are important, are foundational to who we are as a people, are being destroyed. And you have to talk about it in that way. And instead, I think what's happening is you've got all these Democrats chasing that billionaire tech money. Hey, we'll make a deal. Hey, we'll give you what you want. We'll just not do it in that way. And I think what we're seeing is that Silicon Valley and capitalism in general are very open to authoritarianism if it's in their best interests. Where are all the corporate leaders standing up to say this is wrong, to say we're not going to go along with this? Everyone is just complying. And so we're learning a lot right now about the role of billionaires in our society, about the cowardice of our establishment leaders and corporations. And I think that in my optimistic hope is that we'll come out of this era understanding the dangers that were created when we allowed these situations to get out of control and to challenge the very moral foundations of our entire country, our entire reason for being. And I think that unless we seize that moral high ground and start talking directly about the morality of it, we're going to lose. And I think there's time to change that reality. But again, this idea of begging crypto and other people to do the right thing, they're not going to do the right thing. They think this is the right thing.
Yeah.
And we have to tell people that's what they believe, because if they start getting unpopular, if there is unrest, if the polls show a massive dramatic shift, these guys are going to get scared. Remember, these billionaires, these tech companies, these corporations, they're cowards. They're going to shift to where the population shifts. We have to shift the population, and rapidly.
Is that where you see their vulnerability? Is that there is a populist, an economic populist resent that can be flamed?
Yeah, Americans deciding they don't want to live under this corporate dictatorship, that they're not ready for the Constitution and democracy to end because of one election, right? But I think people aren't telling anybody that. Instead, they see their leaders meeting with Silicon Valley guys saying everything's going to be okay. We're going to find a way to reconcile and kind of go along with most of it. And what you have here is the Overton window being shifted all the way to the extremist authoritarian right. And the Democratic Party is gonna be what the centrist Republicans were a few years ago. What's the political theory here? And I think a lot of these guys are maybe scared. These leaders, I saw someone saying they're getting death threats, etc. But if you're not willing to die for your country, don't put your hand up and take that oath. That's supposed to mean something.
Yeah. I mean, and Sam Altman went on TV, I guess it was a few hours ago, and was making fun of Elon Musk because you know what? He's mad that he's not getting in on the looting of the federal government. That's what he wants. And he's not in the in crowd because they hate each other. But and I wonder if that's who Hakeem Jeffries was meeting with and speaking to, by the way. But like you've talked a little bit about crypto and its role in this kind of anarcho-capitalist tech vision. Crypto was supposed to be outside of fiat currency. That was its initial selling point. But a lot of these guys got in super early and hold a ton of cryptocurrency. There's discussions about putting our payment system on the blockchain. Like, what does crypto mean in this context? And what are some of the potential outcomes that could be very terrifying if they actually get their way and incorporate crypto and this kind of speculation into our government?
Definitely. Crypto is about money, and money is about power. And remember, their goal is to control the centers of power and information: government, police forces, media, academia, religion, and money. And their stated goal is to replace existing institutions and things with parallel versions, new versions that serve the interests of these tech guys. And so I think a key part of this whole plan is to replace the dollar's power in the world with the power of crypto, in particular Bitcoin. Balaji Srinivasan, a former Andreessen employee and Thiel associate, a guy who Musk regularly interacts with on Twitter, has been very explicit about this. It's about going to a Bitcoin standard, which would make all of these guys fabulously wealthy and put them in control of a great deal of monetary policy. And so I think, Doge says it best. You coupling the destruction of government with a crypto coin that has gained a lot because of Musk's antics. That's kind of, in a way, a perfect expression of what's going on here. And I think we're going to see nonstop crypto scams and crypto moves. AI and crypto are the two main technologies by which these guys see the future being controlled. And so we're going to see this massive rush to control AI, to control crypto. And if you can combine those in the American government somehow, then you also have one of the most powerful governments in the world at the helm of that experiment. And, I don't have every particular detail there. There's some good writing coming out from other writers. I posted an essay today on the Nerd Reich by a writer going into what all of the AI stuff means. And it's an AI coup, is what Eric Salvaggio calls it. So there are other people who are really tuning into some of these details, and I think it's great. And but that's what it's about. It's about controlling the technologies that will allow them to have more wealth and more power. And crypto is at the heart of this. Crypto spent a lot of money in these elections to take out Democrats or to put in place crypto-friendly Democrats. Any politician taking money for crypto or speaking well of crypto is one of the bad guys, just to be clear, I think, at this day and age.
Yes.
Agreed. All right. Lastly, and thank you for indulging us for so long, but this is really fascinating. I think very important stuff. When you're looking out 30, 60, 90 days, maybe even 180 days, like what's next? What's the next phase? It feels like, I have no doubt that Musk's people still have access to all this stuff. It's just a question of whether their access is going to be illicit after agreed upon as being illicit. Like at this point, it's illicit. We don't know what's going to happen at one point when they keep ignoring what judges are telling them to do and not do. We're going to get to that inflection point. What do you anticipate happening at that inflection point? And then what happens after that, regardless of how that sort of like one source of friction plays out? Because I'm convinced that I for whatever reason, I don't have trust that the 20-year-old named Big Balls or whatever the guy's name is, has been like, okay, I won't put some type of backdoor tunnel into this system or whatever it is. I mean, I just find it hard to believe they're like, well, that would be a bridge too far to go. But assuming like we have what society has agreed is illicit and what they can do and then what they're going to do, and one implicates the other. But what do you anticipate over the sort of the near to midterm?
Well, they're going to go one by one, seizing power and destroying different institutions of government. I think the major thing we're going to see emerge, and we've seen this a bit already with the USAID conversation, is the rising of these new conspiracy theories and false narratives based on, oh, look what we discovered was actually happening behind the scenes. A whole information stream designed to use the government to undermine people's faith in the government and to say the government has been doing all these bad secret things, maybe even stealing elections, and now we're going to put a stop to that. So I think you're going to see them use whatever power they have to start defining narratives, like the Twitter files, right? Ostensibly based on the information we now have access to, and that's going to just pump all of these right-wing anti-government memes into the mainstream. And so I think that's the main thing to look out for. The creation of unreality and making sure that people can't discern fact from fiction is very crucial to any fascist or authoritarian regime. And so they're going to turn the jets on for that. There's going to be a direct stream from the conspiracy theorists in our federal government to all of their media organs, and people are not going to know what to believe. And they're going to think that, wow, something really bad was happening, and it's good that we have this dictatorship in place to clean this all up. That's what they're going for, in my opinion, based on my observation of them so far. Lavo
Jato, I guess, on some level.
Yeah.
Any?
No. I mean, it's pretty bleak, but Gil, your work is awesome. People really should check you out on Ghost.
We will put a link to. We will put
not the third.
The Nerd Reich.
Nerd Reich. There we go.
We'll put a link to Nerd Reich at majority.fm and in the podcast and YouTube description. Gil, would love to check in with you in a couple of months to see. I mean, if it's going to be allowed 6 months from now, love to check back in with you. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.